Okay, Salam alaikum. I realized that I didn't talk about attachment theory, and it's a very important like kind of concept to understand when you navigate relationships because it helps you understand your own behavior. And I thought I talked about it, but turns out I didn't. And I think I'm confusing it because I talk a lot about it in other spaces, but maybe not here. So, um, let me talk, like, I'll try to break it down very simply, and I'm sure most of you have heard attachment theory, but I'm going to break it down to a more practical way of understanding it so that you know what to do to get to a more secure place. So, there's a bunch of like, articles about it on the internet. So if you just search attachment theory, it'll give you more of a better breakdown. But pretty much, if I were to summarize it, there's three kind of ways of how someone attaches to another person. And it comes from the way they were raised as a child. But there's like the anxious attachment, where someone's a lot more anxious. They're more constantly worried about abandonment and someone leaving them. Avoidant attachment is someone who is avoiding connection, avoids intimacy. And the third one is secure attachment, which is what we're all aiming for, which is the healthy way of going about relationships, where they're open and you know, it's just more healthy. And I'll describe it all in a minute. So on my own journey of finding a spouse of before I found my husband, um, I was a lot more on the avoidant side of things, very avoidant. There's also the mix of two, right? There's also something called disorganized attachment, which is a mix of both anxious and avoidant. And me personally, I was a lot more leaning more on the avoidant. And in my mind, I thought, okay, like growing up, I was avoidant even in college and whatever. And I would just avoid all men, thinking that I'm just doing this Islamically because this is just an Islamic thing. But turns out I was just afraid. And I didn't realize it until later that I was just avoidant. And so let me start with anxious first. And before I even start there, the reason why this is important is if you don't understand your habits, you're going to consistently perpetuate it and push people away, or even understand why like people that you don't want are so interested in you. And it all kind of stems to the way you see relationships and the way you are attached to people. So I'll just start with this, right? Like the anxious attachment. What is anxious attachment? How does it actually show up? So the way I see it in people is the main thoughts that comes up with them is thoughts like, well, what if they leave me? What if I'm not good enough? What if they aren't showing enough interest in me? And when they aren't showing enough interest, they get anxious, like what if they leave me? They're more focused on like worried about being abandoned. They're more focusing on like, do they like me enough? They're more focusing on like, am I not interesting enough for them? Right? They constantly feel the need, like, I need to talk to someone to feel okay. Like I need to be um constantly talking. They're worried that their needs are not going to be met enough. And and so what they do is like they cling on more and they're worried about abandonment. They're worried about like um they're worried that they're going to be left anytime soon, right? So just a second on when it comes to anxious, like if you're relating to this, one thing I want to point out is sometimes it just helps to identify that you're in this category, but it's not an identity. Like I don't want you to see this as like, this is just who I am. Because one very common mistake that people make, especially people who've been to therapy for years, they take what they learn and they make it an identity. Like, this is just who I am. I'm just someone who's just anxious all the time, and that I'm an anxious attachment person, right? So that's not the point. The point is, let me identify, oh, this is where I'm at on the scale, on the spectrum of attachment, and what can I do to get myself to a more secure place? And so, just as kind of something to think about is like, what are the main driving thoughts do you have every time you start getting to know someone? Do you often worry that they're going to leave me or they're not going to see me as good enough? Or do you, like, what comes up for you that makes you feel like you have to, like, that makes you anxious? Typically, a lot of the people who are more on the anxiety spectrum, they see marriage as like the solution of, like, that's the end all be all. Like, this is it. This is the thing that's going to meet all of my needs, and I will never be like, I will be so happy after that. That's how people typically see that, right? It's the very opposite of avoidant attachment, which avoidant attachment is very like they just like they gag every time they think about marriage because they're like, it's just too much closeness. They feel suffocated anytime there's like closeness or like anything like that, right? So I'll get to avoidant attachment in a minute, but let me just finish up anxious. So anxious, when someone like, even when like the anxious people, when someone likes them back, they see it as pathetic because it's like, not likes them back. If someone they don't like likes them, they see it as pathetic because they're like, why would you like me? And what happens is anxious people thrive off of the high of the chase of needing validation. And they confuse that with love, or they confuse that with connection. Right? Like, I know people who, like, my people I coach, right? There are some that I know that every time they get someone they really like that is interested in them, they are automatically turned off. Because it's like, why would you like me? Like, I know that the typical habit is that they have to do the chasing and the like, well, why don't, you know, why aren't they texting me back on time? Why aren't they this? And if that doesn't exist and there's just constant validation, like healthy constant validation, they're just like thrown off by it because they're supposed to, they feel the anxiety is very familiar and they confuse that with connection. And that's the problem. And so why is this happening? It's coming from their thoughts about like abandonment and what they think of themselves. And whatever you think of yourself is what perpetuates either anxiety or avoidance. Okay, so also I've also seen that when someone is really anxious, like, or talking to someone who barely gives them validation, but it's like they're always on edge, like, oh, is he gonna text me back or is he not? Is he like, and it's just like this constant thinking about them. That's what they're more attached to. They're like more attached to that feeling rather than a healthy connection of like, how do I feel? I hope I'm making sense because this can be confused with love. This can be confused with I'm in love, and it's not. It's people fall for people who are not healthy in any way, like narcissists or just extreme, just not good people, just because they're more focused on their ego and what validation they need. And the way to overcome this for the anxious people is you need a lot more, you need thoughts that help you see that you are safe where you are. You don't need anyone to give you the validation that you need. And to do that, you have to figure out, what are you thinking about you? What's the thoughts that you have about yourself, and list it all out and notice how you talk to yourself. Because of course, if you're talking to yourself in such a negative way, you're going to need someone else to give you that validation because you're not safe inside your own body. Your own mind, you're telling yourself all these really, really ugly thoughts that make you feel not safe. And to feel better, your brain is going to tie your whole self-worth and everything to someone else to give you that. And that's the only way you're allowed to feel okay. Obviously, you're going to depend on that. So that's why to take back your power is to see, wait, if what am I waiting on for them to tell me so I can feel okay? Okay, I want them to tell me that they like me. I want them to tell me that I'm beautiful. I want them to tell me that that I am worthy, that I am important to them, that I am valuable to them. Okay, how can I take all of those thoughts and believe that right now? And what you do is you start believing those, like, right? Like you create that list of the things that you wish you could believe, that you wish someone told you, and you believe that now. You don't have to wait on someone else to tell you that. Okay. Um, That's for anxious. There's so much more to cover on, but I'm just gonna give like a quick summary on each one of them. Avoidant attachment. So avoidant attachment, and this is something I could really relate on because I could, it's something I kind of grew up with, is the avoidant attachment, which is like I felt thoughts of like marriage is going to suffocate me. I'm going to feel trapped. Marriage is going to ruin my life. I feel like once they get to really know me, they're not going to actually want to be with me. Okay. I even thoughts like I don't care to get married. It's not going to end well anyway. What's the point of getting married if it's not going to end well? And how this looks is like as soon as you meet someone that's serious, they avoid the person or they find it really uncomfortable when things get serious. And they just like they try to minimize rejection by saying they don't care, or like they tell themselves they don't care, but they really do, but they just try to avoid rejection, right? Their main thing is like, I don't even want to think about rejection, so let me just like avoid the whole thing completely. They're always thinking about how much work it's gonna take. It's gonna take so much work, like, and not in a way of like, not even. I'm talking about the relationship itself. They're thinking like this is, I have to like validate them, and I have to talk to them, and I have to text them good morning, and I have to do like that's how the way they think is like it's just a lot of work because they don't see the fruit of a relationship. They just see that it's just like it's just a lot of work and it's not worth it. They always need space. They're not ready to commit. Okay. They tend to focus on the flaws of the person because they're trying to find ways to exit the relationship. Like, what's the fastest way to leave? Because it's getting too serious. And so I just need a reason to leave. And they constantly fantasize about how much better it would be if they were single or if they were with someone else. And they avoid connecting because they're so afraid that it's not going to last. What's the point? What's the point of even connecting? Right? That's the way they think. And I'm saying they because I used to think this way. And I'm constantly focusing on like judging people or like focusing on their negative qualities and how it's not going to work. I'm just focusing on how it's not going to work. So why am I thinking this way? My main thoughts, the reason why this is coming up is because I'm thinking um either I have a very negative view and image of marriage. That's one. I think relationships is so suffocating. Why? Because if I even what I think of relationships is it's always going to end. So what does that mean? It means I'm going to get rejected. So I'm going to constantly avoid whatever it takes to get to the point of even loving someone properly, because then it's going to come back at me. It's going to make me feel like there's a chance of rejection. So what does the brain do? It does whatever it takes to avoid it. And so the work here is to see like how can a marriage be actually a really loving, beautiful thing? And how is it safe that even if someone were to see a flaw of yours and the bad side of you, how can you accept it first? How can you accept those parts of you first so that when someone else does reject you for it, you're not like completely shook and like um just devastated that someone rejected you because of that. Because oftentimes that's what we're afraid of, right? We're afraid of someone rejecting us for something that we already reject ourselves for. And so we just have to, how do we overcome that? Is we accept all the parts of us that we reject. And so that you stop rejecting yourself. So that's the work that I did, right? I had to list out all the things that I was really like either ashamed of or I didn't like about myself. And I tried to see the human side of me, that like, oh, like how human of me. I have, let's say I was afraid like someone was going to reject me because of my body. And I would say, oh, like I have a human body. And if someone doesn't reject it, if someone rejects it, that just means they don't, have the capacity to see God's creation as beautiful. And that's okay. But I accept my body. I accept the way I look. I accept the way um I am. And even other parts of me, right? Like any other negative parts of me, how can I still even though I don't like those parts of me, how can I still accept it? Because remember here, the reason why you don't want to be connected to someone is because you're afraid of them saying something to you that you would feel, what's the word? Either rejected or just ashamed of. And so the solution is to really work on, like, how can I stop being ashamed of myself so that when someone does reject me, I'm just like, whatever. It's not whatever, but like I'm hurt and I want to express it in a healthy way. Like, hey, what you said to me really hurt. Like that hurts when you say that. And not needing to kind of completely just run away and end the whole relationship. Okay, so that is avoidant attachment. So another part of this is anxious people and avoidant people are attracted to each other because it's this loop, right? It's this anxious avoidant loop where anxious people are expected to chase and they're always on edge wondering if the person's going to call or text. And people who are more avoidantly attached are afraid to lose their independence. So when anxious people want to get closer to them, the avoidant people start panicking and start like fizzling out and running away. And this is why it's more common for I'm not going to say like which gender is more, but like you find men to be more avoidant and women to be more anxious, but that's not everyone, right? Like I said, like I'm more avoidant. And so when women are like, oh, all men don't want to commit, it's because they're probably in the anxious attachment and they're stuck and they keep attracting the avoidant ones because the avoidant ones, as soon as it's a dynamic. It's just subhanAllah, like that's how our brains are wired. But as soon as you feel on edge, like, oh my God, like, is he gonna text me? Is he not? And then in order for the anxious person to feel even better, they need to connect. They need to talk to the person. So they over text or they do things that kind of pushes the other person away. And that's what makes people withdraw and then they give up and they're like, oh, everyone sucks. So I really want to emphasize that sometimes this feeling, like the feeling on edge of like, is really confused with love and actual connection because it's mixed with anxiety. And when you're familiar with it, it makes you want to like keep pursuing it, thinking that like this is love, but it's not. So I'm having a headache today, but I'm just like, wow, I'm actually making a video even with a headache. I'm proud of myself. Okay, so secure attachment. Okay, this is the final thing. Secure is the healthiest form of it, right? So how do secure people actually see relationships? Like when I think like now, alhamdulillah, I'm secure. That doesn't mean I don't occasionally have my avoidant stuff come up every now and then, but I'm much more aware of it. I don't let it run the show. But secure attachment is more of like I see people as healthy human beings. I see people as lovable human beings, and there's nothing to be afraid of or to like run away from because the worst that could happen is someone says something to me and I feel a little emotion and that's it. We move on. Everything is manageable. Everything is just like there's nothing to be afraid of. Like if someone were to say something to me that hurts me, I just process it, I communicate it, and we move on. And I absolutely love who I'm being. The secure people love who they are, and they're not afraid of other people like hurting them because they're secure, right? They're secure and like whatever happens to me, I'll figure it out. Whatever happens to me, I'll talk it through. I'll do what I can to figure it out. And so you're comfortable with seeing your own flaws and you're comfortable with other people's flaws too. Because let's say avoidant attachment, they're more focused on the flaws. They're focused on how can I reject them immediately because of their flaws. But secure attachment knows that you are a healthy human being, which means that you're going to have flaws and you've accepted your own flaws. And when you accept your own flaws, it's much easier to accept other people's flaws. You don't reject someone because of that. Because honestly speaking, when you reject someone else's flaws, is because you're rejecting yourself in some way or the other for those either similar flaws, right? Like if you reject someone because they don't make enough money and you can't respect them, it's because there's a part of you that doesn't respect yourself because of some other reason, but it's somehow attached to it. So then your brain will just start rejecting other people, right? So the goal is to find someone who is in a more secure attachment. The thing is, most secure people don't struggle with relationships because they don't stress out about relationships. They're just like, it's just such a normal thing to be in. Like, why would I stress out about it? And so they're oftentimes they're easily snatched up because they're so comfortable with relationships. There's nothing to be afraid of or avoidant of. It's all it is you see another human. Oh, they have flaws. Okay, I have flaws, and we accept each other. That secure attachment is very comfortable doing that. And they're more stable. They're not something to like chase or like try to impress or anything. They're just normal human beings who are just like very the word is stable. Yeah, stable is the word. Okay. So there's no like highs and lows. It's just very like normal. Everything's normal. Oh, you have flaws. Okay. Like tell me about this. And then you kind of make a decision based off of what, never at your own expense. You're always making decisions based off of, okay, like I see they have the flaws. You see it from a more compassionate place. Now, what anxious people do is they see the flaws and they're like, it's okay. And they accept flaws at their own expense because they inherently believe that no one's going to actually want them. So let me like accept this person who has a lot of flaws, not flaws as in like I'm talking about flaws that are definitely either deal breakers and also just things that are disrespectful to them, but they don't see that it's a deal breaker because in their mind they're filtering like I just need someone to be with because I can't even stand the thought of being alone. So they accept people who either are very avoidant and disrespect them on purpose and like neglect them, or just disrespectful behavior as well. So I've said a lot of things. I'm trying to see what else. Yeah, so secure, right? Going back to secure, the goal is to be in a more secure attachment place. And we are all grown-up adults. There's no more abandonment. Like there's no more like if someone leaves you, that doesn't mean you're abandoned. It just means a whole adult just chose not to be with you. So what does it mean? How does a secure person interpret when they get ghosted or um when things don't work out? They're like, oh, okay, I'm still lovable. It means nothing about them if someone were to leave them. And it means nothing about them if someone gets close to them, they're not like afraid of like, oh my God, like this is going to be a disaster. They're thinking, oh, this like could be a really good relationship. Let me see how this works. Let me see how this could work out. And they're more stable, right? There's not like highs and lows of infatuation completely like derailed off of their life. It's just a very stable way of seeing things. And I could go on and on about this, but I would just recommend you to more resources just for you to research this better. But there's a book called Attached, and it's a very popular book. If you read up on that, or even if you go on YouTube and search more about what is anxious and avoidant attachment and how to get to more secure, that will help too. But in summary, in order to get to a more secure attachment, the way to break it down is what do you think about yourself? What do you think about the opposite gender? And what do you think about relationships? And what do you think about marriage? Those thoughts determine how you feel about relationships and about yourself. And that's how you kind of relate to another person. Relating to another person is, let's say if you're someone who believes you're not good enough, your brain is going to do whatever it takes to protect you from rejection. And if you're someone who believes like marriage is a trap and it's going to kill you and you're going to be suffocated forever, it's going to protect you from it by avoiding and rejecting people who are really good potentials just because you don't want to be married, because you're afraid of it. And even if subconsciously you have thoughts, if you're not logically thinking this, if subconsciously you have those fears, and you haven't addressed them, you will still be operating from those fears. And so that's really important to bring it up and talk about it. And it helps talk about it with a coach. That's what I help people with, and or a therapist or whatever, and to like actually address these things, because this is how you heal into a more secure relationship, is to show yourself that your nervous system is safe if someone does ghost you, or if someone is not with you, or if someone does get close to you, how does your nervous system feel? All of that relates to how you can get to a more secure attachment. And so I just wanted to give a quick summary on this. This is obviously very in depth, but I also want to leave you with, do not like make this a whole identity and a label. It's more of like something to kind of understand where you're at and how to get yourself to a different, like a more secure place. And if you want more in depth of how to do the work, I have that offer on my website. There's like, I think it's 200 right now, but there's the course of the inner shift, where you can just like watch all the replays and you can see how to do the work. And I give you a workbook on how to do that. And alhamdulillah, a lot of people have gone many like deep shifts in such a short amount of time. And so that's what I help with. That's what helps you become more secure. Okay, that is the work. The work is to see what your thoughts are about yourself and to shift it. And I go really in depth in that course. And I'll link the website in my bio, and then or in the description. And I also have a more support group, live coaching, group coaching stuff coming up in January, which is going to be a 6-month long process where I really go in depth about relationships and how to navigate, like practically speaking, how to navigate things. And so that will also come up in January, and all of that is on my website. And you can also talk to me one-on-one. I have that option as well. And so inshallah this helps, and I will see you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum.